Hey everybody, welcome back to another episode of the Get Better Together podcast, where I give you practical advice to live a better life in this changing world. This is episode 6 of the season 1. My name is Prince and I'm your host on this podcast. The other day, I left work a couple of hours early and it took me 2 hours to reach home. You know that I have a full-time job and I live in a metro city. And usually I keep my work timings as such so that I don't have to commute in the peak hours. In fact, I'm thankful to have the privilege to, have a little flexibility in my work timings. And because I had to leave early the other day, it was unfortunately during the peak hours. And so, I hit traffic. And as I was waiting in the traffic, getting beaten up by honking from all sides, I started thinking, it occurred to me that how do these people who have no choice but to commute in the peak hours every day deal with it? And because not only does it waste enormous amount of your time, but also adds to your frustration. And I think and then I thought about the reasons. The only reason that has led to this problem is insane amount of vehicles on the road. Everyone wants to have their own vehicles. Everyone wants to buy their own car. You want a car, I want a car. So if you think about it technically, I want you to pay attention to this. On one hand, the amount of space allocated to the roads hasn't even doubled in the last 20 years. But on the other hand, increase in the number of vehicles on the same roads has gone through the roof. My mother always says to me that it wasn't like that in her younger days. Only the few people used to have cars because only the rich could afford it. But now with, these heavy salaries and all sorts of financing options, every Tom, Dick and Harry is buying fancy cars. Okay, so that's the problem at hand. What we're going to talk about today is how to tackle this issue. How you can make your everyday commute traffic less and frustration less. So if you are someone who wants to know how you can commute smartly, beat traffic most of the times and get to your destination on time, then I want you to pay attention to what I'm about to tell you. And you can implement these solutions as soon as you want, maybe from tomorrow. Stay with me. Most people have a typical routine that they follow when it comes to commuting. They usually commute at the same time every day, take the same roads, stop at the same red lights, and more or less spend the same time every day commuting. The first thing you need to do is that if you want to commute smartly is be flexible about the timing of the commute, because that plays a big role in deciding how much time you will end up spending in traffic. If you commute during the peak hours, you will, spend more time in traffic. And if you commute during regular hours, then you will spend less time. Hope you will agree with me on that. So look at the options, and if you're able to change your commute timings to non-peak hours, it will help you save at least 1 hour each day. I know what I'm saying is very common sense, but most people don't even bother asking if they could adjust their work timings and they keep clocking in, clocking out at the same time for years and years. And this applies to both commuting by road or in metro trains. In peak hours, even the metro trains are overly packed. And, being pushed around sweaty armpits isn't really a pleasant experience, is it? And the second thing that you have to do is each time you commute, use GPS. Use the bloody thing. We don't tend to use GPS for our daily commute because, we take the same roads each day, so we know our way to work. It works mostly except for some days when all of a sudden, due to some construction diversion or road accident, there is unexpected traffic on those roads. And then you get late because when you left, you didn't take into account the extra time that the sudden traffic jam will now result in. But if you use GPS every time before leaving, it will tell you the estimated time and you can know about any real-time traffic jams. And then perhaps taking a different route might be more appropriate. Start to use GPS each day for a couple of weeks, and that too each time you're commuting. You will thank me later, because it's really smart thing to do and will help you cut down on unnecessary time waste due to unexpected traffic jams. And the next and the last thing, and the most pertinent point of all, is to manage what you do while commuting. Even though by changing your commute timings and taking the most efficient roads. If you live in a metro city, you can save some time using these strategies, but it's inevitable that you will spend at least some time getting from one place to another. The main objective of you listening to this and me telling you this is to know how can we stop wasting the time that we spend commuting. And the best way to not waste, is to utilize that time wisely. For example, I commute to work each day by cab, but I don't commute during the peak hours. My office cab picks me up at 11 in the morning and takes me about 35 to 40 minutes to get to work, and almost the same amount of time in the evening coming back home. Which means even after following step 1 and 2 that I described, just to you, I still have to spend nearly 80 minutes commuting, which is, in bigger scheme of things, it adds up to a lot of time. And that time is very precious to me. And, I use this time to write content for my videos, podcast, or anything else that I'm up to, I do that just on my mobile phone. And sometimes I even read books. But my habit is such that there's no bloody way I'm ever wasting that time. Even when I drive to work, I won't listen to radio, just random music. I'll connect my phone with car Bluetooth and listen to audiobooks or podcast of my liking. So that's how I make better use of my commute time. Now you ask yourself, how can you make the best use of your commute time? Because it doesn't have to be wasted. Your goal should be to use 80% of your commute time doing something productive. And on the remaining 20% of the days, you could cut yourself a little slack and, listen to some music. Sometimes there could be, nothing better than starting the day with some good upbeat music. So you don't feel like that you have to be doing something productive all the time during your commute. So you can take this time to enjoy yourself and relax, because see, that mood that you set, before you get to work will continue throughout the day. Okay, so let's summarize what we've just talked about. Step number 1 is that avoid peak hours by all means, and actually put in efforts for that. Ask your manager for another shift time, because remember, if you don't ask, you won't get it. Step number 2 is to religiously use GPS every time you commute. It'll even make you look like a smart person. And step number 3 is to not waste the time that you end up spending in commuting anyway. Read stuff. If you can't read, then listen to audiobooks. In fact, if you spend 30 minutes listening to audiobook each day, you could literally finish one book in 1 week. And imagine over the period of time, how many books will you have read, and the amount of value and learning it will add to you. So you could listen to my podcast if you want. I'll make it worth your time. And so these are the 3 steps that you can take even from tomorrow to commute like a smart individual. On this podcast, I share with you what works best for me, and likewise, I ask you to share what works for you so we can learn from each other. You can put that in the comment section. And there is one more thing I want to ask. How are you liking this podcast? Please let me know by leaving a review, and do share with other people. What content you share with others says more about you and less about the actual content. So if you share good content with others, that also makes you a person who has an eye to identify good content. So do share my podcast with your WhatsApp friends, your Facebook friends, or anyone else you feel can benefit from this. Also, I encourage you to subscribe to my podcast as well, so you never miss a new episode. And because I plan to upload 1 episode each week, and my goal is to do that, mostly on Monday morning, so you can start your week with a bit of a practical advice. On that note, I want to quickly mention that I appreciate the time you took time. Okay, I'm screwing up now. I appreciate the time that you took to listen, and I appreciate you spending the time to listening. I appreciate the time that you're taking to listen to my podcast, and you have a wonderful day. Thanks for listening.